We're here to talk about, are you tired of not being in control of your interview process? Or as Charlotte suggested a few minutes ago, would you like to be in control of your interview process?
Or how to take control. We're probably going to give you about 20 tips on taking control of the interview process.
And the first thing we're going to talk about, if I can figure out how to run this, there we go, is your pre-interview preparation. And the first thing you have to do really is get in front of your friends and colleagues. You know, if you're a FANG member, you know we have the FANG member database. So what do people know about your business? It's amazing. If you type in a company name into that database, you're going to come up with someone that worked there. And it's an amazing tool. And call them. Remember, part of the agreement of being part of the Financial Executives Networking Group is you're a friend and you're going to help people. So I've had people call me and say, do you know anybody at XYZ company? I pull up my computer, type it in, and send them 10 people that work there throughout the country. This is an amazing thing. But you also need to plug into your friends and associates and colleagues and find out about that company.
And I'd love to add one thought to that as well. The more you have conversations with people about what you are pursuing, the more you are top of mind with others that can connect you to opportunity. Even now, with everything that's going on, more than 90% of jobs are landed through personal networks rather than through a traditional approach or recruiters. It's critically important for you to just really stay looped in with that circle that's immediately surrounding you that are most excited to help you succeed.
See, Brendan doesn't even know that that's what Matt says every night in his newsletter. So very cool. Very cool. There's the news, right? I mean, it's amazing. As an old guy, I love this. I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we had no way to figure out, things about a company. You need to know everything you can before you go in. Be prepared.
And what I would like to point out that what Mark and I are going to be talking about, this is truly how you do get control of the interview process before you ever walk in the door or shake anyone's hand or have a personal conversation with them. Because the challenge right now, yes, we're in a tight market where there's a lot of opportunity out there. The challenge is finding that match for your skill set and then what the client or what the company is needing. And then once you find that match and you find something that you're interested in, it's a horse race. And it, like many races, you can win by a nose or lose by a whisker. And we would a lot rather you be the one that's in the lead, turning down opportunities than being shut out. Because while you may have had relevant experience and be able to knock it out of the park, if for whatever reason your employer or potential employer is unable to connect your talent and why you're better, they're going to have a really hard time justifying their decision about hiring you, particularly if they have set it in their mind that they want someone that looks like something in particular, has a particular experience or skill set, that even though you could learn it, you may not have it. And this is how you can kind of get over some of those obstacles that may come up. So just so you know, that's what Mark and I are going to be talking about for the most part through our conversation tonight. We're not going to be talking about positioning your resume. We're not going to be talking about how to have a firm handshake and how to do bonding and rapport with them. We're giving you all of those inside tracks of how you can, just like I said, this is all about winning by a hair. And we're going to show you where those hairs are found.
Fantastic. What is the company's reputation? Yeah, that's on the street. I'm sure if you just brainstorm, just don't say it out loud. We don't want to, record any of these names, but I'm sure that this comes to mind one or two companies that in this city or in your city that you say, that's a terrible place to work. People have had their stripes there. You know, people that have passed through. Why would you go there, right? Just you follow your gut here and make sure you understand it. And then, you know, these people, these recruiters, now we know that most jobs don't come from them, but if you have one, make them work for their commission. Oops, something happened. Wow. There we go. Make sure those recruiters prep you properly. See, you're not even driving, Brendan, and it happens, so it's good. Use those recruiters. Make sure you ask questions. Get as much information. Why are they replacing? Why are they replacing the person? Why did that person leave? What are their biggest problems? Job, have you seen job resume or job descriptions lately? There's no one in the world that can do everything that's on a job description anymore. The recruiter should help you dig through and find out what's really important.
And that is, they're critically important during the hiring process for connecting you with not only the opportunity so that you have a chance to interview, but they should also have, if they've done their job, they should have an inside track on, in particular, which candidates should edge to the top. And then they need to be able to sell you as well over other candidates. And if the more you know about what in particular the company is getting ready to embark on, or if they're in the midst of some sort of change initiative, when you have relevant expertise about where they're going, that recruiter should know it. And it's not just a matter of, well, it's on my resume. It doesn't matter, because most of the time they're not really paying a lot of attention to the resume until they're sitting in front of you. In a lot of cases, everything's been auto-sorted by bots and by algorithms and everything else under the sun. So you really need to leverage every human during this interview process and every contact that you have in order to edge your way to the top.
Exactly right. This next one's a little weird. I don't think a lot of people think about this, but who are the professional firms? If you know, I just, being an accounting background, I picked up the big four accounting firms. If they're working with the big four versus mom's tax service, it tells you something about them. Who are their attorneys? Who are their, who do they bank with? Those things are available. You got to dig, but those are questions you should be looking for. Where, you know, do they have audited financial statements? Who's signing them? We know this isn't going to tell you a lot, but it just positions them in the marketplace. And
it also gives you one more thread to pull for a contact that could be relevant. And there's a concept called circling the wagons that I absolutely adore. And it's where, even though you may have a connection or a contact in with a leader or decision maker or management group, the more you can have other people that are also tapping on that door and saying, hey, I know you've got this open role, or you're looking to address this issue. You know, I know someone that has an amazing background working with companies just like yours, and I'd love the opportunity to make an introduction. You want that happening for you, even if you've already got an interview scheduled, because the more they hear your name, that's branding. And that's branding where it really counts, where people are really starting to say, hey, you know, they really know their stuff. They've got a great reputation. This is somebody that is well regarded, and that edges you up.
Very good. I love the fact that if perhaps if you found out that somebody worked at Deloitte or used Deloitte, and you found out I had a contact there, you should call me. Maybe they know them. Maybe I can help you meet them that way. So it's fantastic. Just as an example. I love this. We're going to talk a little bit more about things going two ways. But Who are the decision makers or the hiring managers in this company? Find out. It's a two-way street, which we'll talk about. But, when you post, drinking parties on your Facebook, they hold it against you. What about them? What about the other way around? Do you like their politics? I'm not telling you which one's way to go the other way. Do you like their social standings, their lifestyles? Figure it out. Maybe you don't want to work for them in the first place. I mean, it's highly likely.
Because there are some people that life is too short, and you can tell a lot about their personal views and what they may be bringing to work or allowing to influence them through whatever is happening on social media.
I've never found anybody to get nicer after they hired me.
Isn't that funny?
So crazy. So the last thing, here we go. The last thing, and this is particularly important if you're trying to take transferable skills to a new industry, okay? You need to look at the industry and know it and demonstrate that you can. And of course, there's the news, but there's a couple of reports I really like out there that just dig deep into what's happening in an industry. The first one is IBIS Reports. It's been around for 50 years. It is the most detailed data dive into an industry you're ever going to get. Problem with that is it costs like $925 per report. But maybe you like that. I'm currently using a little less expensive Dun & Bradstreet First Research Industry Profile. Okay, those are about $150 per report, and that I use those in my business valuation work. But it's really, in that particular case, they actually go down to interview questions. What would you ask a CFO? What would you ask the COO? It's pretty cool. Dun & Bradstreet's done a great job on that. Now, yes, these cost a few bucks, but maybe you have a friend that has access to them, or
call Mark,
or potentially, it's really interesting. I found out college students, especially those in their master's degrees, these people provide them access to their databases so that they get used to them and use them. So if you know anybody in a master's program, they can get IBIS reports for like nothing, and they're $1,000 a pop. Okay, so just that's worth the price of admission to tonight, right there. So.
Okay, so Mark has been talking all about research, and you've got some great tips about what you look for to prepare for that initial interview. Now I get to have a little bit of fun talking to you about what to do with that research. Mark, do you want to advance the slide? When you think about preparing for an interview, my suggestion is you take all of this information that Mark has just talked about, and then you sit down and you start thinking about what is most important to you in understanding the opportunity. One thing I want to remind you of, I don't care what job you are interviewing for, that interview should be a two-way street. It is as much about you determining whether or not you want to work for that company as it is that company deciding if they want to hire you. Okay, so this is a mutual qualify, disqualify conversation. I just want to get that out there really fast. And the more you have that mindset approaching the interview, the more you actually will be in a position to have the guts to ask the really hard questions and to dive in when you sense there might be something that's not being shared. Because I'll tell you, your gut is normally right on whenever you're in an interview. When you hear the things that they're super confident about and they're most excited about the business, and then there are other things that they may not want to spend quite as much time talking about. And that's where you really want to dive in. So a few questions that I always like to have out there. And I like for you to consider all of this whenever you are interviewing for an opportunity. And now interviewing, remember, It's not just about going after a role. It is also about if you wanted to do contract work or gig work or fractional work, that all of this applies to that as well. So the first thing that I really want to encourage you to explore is, what is the culture? What is it like? What's the work environment? How supportive are they? How collaborative are they? How competitive are they? And understand that everybody is going to couch that in positive terms. Nobody's going to say it's dog eat dog here, that they're just not going to do that. But what they will tell you is, we hire only top performers and we're only after go-getters. And that can tell you a lot. So whenever you hear this, you want to explore and say, tell me a little bit more about that. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And the more you dig and start to pull these threads, the more you're really going to get an accurate picture of what that organization looks like and feels like on a day-to-day basis. You want to understand who the leader is. What are they about? What are some of the goals that they have? When you dig in and you start to really discover what the organization has done, what their track history has been, perhaps you're going to look at one of these reports that Mark is telling you about that tells you about their performance, talks about acquisitions, it talks about industry trends, things like that. The more you can ask questions about, I see that there are opportunities coming up around merging with a lot of companies and being positioned for acquisition. Are you looking for the acquiring role, or do you want to position yourself so that you are attractive for acquisition? The more you ask questions like that when there's industry trends going up, that demonstrates that you have done your homework. And if they've gone through a couple of different mergers and you want to know how they navigate through those, then I would ask questions along the lines of, how do they navigate the change whenever they are acquiring other companies or being acquired? And who are the key players or stakeholders that are a part of that? And what are they working on in order to make the company really perform well? Those are all very important. And the other thing that you really want to understand is that personal vision of the leader. And the more you understand that the business is their baby, even if they're leading a division or a team, whether they own the business, they're all probably staying up late at night or losing sleep, wondering if everything is going to go the way that it's supposed to go. And it's important that you really do dive in and understand that and have that conversation and give them the chance to share what they are most excited about and what they need to accomplish. Mark talked about this a little bit. You need to understand who has been in that role before. If it's a new role, what are the expectations and are they realistic? Like Mark said, there are a lot of people that are putting out these job descriptions that they're never going to find everybody or every single thing, every single box to check on what they're looking for on their wish list. And it's important that you understand what are the must-haves, what are the like-to-haves, and what are the we can live without it. And those are the three categories of what they are looking for in that role. And what you can do is you can ask questions that I call it behavioral-based interviewing. And it's probably a concept that those of you that have ever done a lot of interviewing or HR work, you understand that unlike investments, past performance can be indicative of future performance or future results. So you do want to understand what they've done in the past. So if you ask the question about previous employees, you can ask about, tell me about the person that was in this role. Were they promoted out of the role or were they let go because they didn't perform up to expectations? What did they excel at? Even if they were let go, I want to know what happened in that role that people looked at. I also want to listen for whether or not they say, well, nothing really, because that can tell you a lot. That tells you whether or not you are going to be responsible for cleaning up a lot, getting into that, which is great if that excites you and fulfills you. but you need to go into it with eyes wide open about exactly what that situation is going to be when you get there. So you want to ask questions about where did they excel? What did they struggle with? I'm not necessarily going to say what did they fail at, but I'm going to ask where did they struggle? And that's something that can give me so much insight about whether or not, again, expectations were realistic about what somebody could do in that role. And then finally, ask the question about what does someone have to do to get an A in this role? How will you measure success after 90 days, 6 months, and a year? And get an idea of exactly what they're after so that you've got a scorecard going in order to recognize exactly what's happening. Those are my recommendations on exploring that two-way street of an interview. Mark, do you want to go ahead and advance it?
Nope, I want to say something.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I know, I didn't take a breath. Sorry.
Yeah, take a breath. You're good. What I think we're all too nice. We're supposed to be leaders. And if you don't feel comfortable asking these tough questions, you're not a leader. Okay. I've lost jobs because I didn't want to offend them. So, man and woman up here, ask the hard questions, and you make sure that it's clear that you're interviewing them, because you're all amazing, qualified people. And if you don't step into it as a leader, they're not going to see you that way from day one.
And let me give you just one little bit of insight that was probably one of my best tips ever. I don't want you to ever leave an interview feeling good. Now, let me explain. If you leave an interview feeling good, you probably didn't ask enough questions. And there is never going to be an absolute perfect opportunity, and you are never going to be a shoe-in candidate. That's just not the world that we're living in. There's always a horse race. And what I want you to think about is you need to understand so much about the role that you understand all of the potential pitfalls or obstacles that may come your way. And you also understand who else they're looking at as far as candidates and what expertise they're looking for and exactly where they're weighing their decisions. Remember, it's the must-have, like to have, and can do without.
Standard questions. Why'd you leave your last job? Somebody should smile. I picked these slides. I thought Gary would get a kick out of this, right? Because isn't that immediately what people think?
We can't see them anymore. Everybody did away with their camera. Come on, who's awake? Okay, Mark's still awake. Thanks, Mark, for staying with me. Greg, I appreciate it.
It's good. Why did you leave your last job? Matt talks about this all the time. Question answered, question asked, question answered. Get it out of the way. It's not because you're partying at work, right? Be ready to answer the question. Short and concise, especially you finance types. You know, Matt always teases in his newsletter, we want to give this 30-page, justification of why we left our last jobs. Make it short. Don't blame. Don't complain. Just say, hey, they downsized or they bought somebody and I was outsourced. Be done with it. But it's a one question answer. Brendan?
It's one sentence. And the more you can position it as where you left looking for an opportunity that was a better fit for your skill set and your talent and what excited you the most, that's also another way to think about it.
The other question you could be prepared for is, what have you been doing since you lost your job? So many people that are hiring have never been through a protracted job search. If you're making a couple $100,000 in Kansas City, it can take you 2 years to find a job. The answer is a balance, right? It's a balance. Maybe you spent a little time with your family, but you weren't drinking, blowing golf balls around either, right? Explain what you were doing. A job is a full-time job search is a full-time job, right? It really is. So you can also talk about what, did you do some volunteer work? Did you do some consulting work? Have it ready. Just have it in your back pocket. It's going to come up. Put a happy face on it. I sat around crying because I didn't have a job is not going to get you a job.
It will not. And we do encourage you to do something, even if it is volunteering. If you're in between roles, join SCORE, volunteer there, make a difference, make an impact, go to the incubators. There are tons of people that desperately need help. And the more you can keep your talent and skill set sharp, and again, it's networking, because all of those business leaders are engaged with other mentors. And those other mentors may be hiring somebody or need to hire somebody that looks just like you.
Exactly. Where are we?
Oh, my favorite. All right, let me do a quick show of hands here. Everybody give me a hand up if you wonder how on earth do you position your skill set and talents over somebody else without looking like you're bragging. Anybody want the answer to that question? Do you struggle with that? Or do you sometimes feel like you might be bragging?
Bragging's okay with me.
What was that?
I said bragging's okay with me.
Yeah, bragging is all good, yes, but it's got to be done well.
Absolutely.
Well, what I'd like to do is I'm going to give you just a little bit of this is how you can tell a story in a way that can take your relevant expertise, your greatest talents, and position it for that potential employer to say, hey, I need some of that. What I encourage you to do, we've done all this research. What I also would love for you to do is while you're doing all this research, you also go back and look at your resume and you look at your talent and you look at what you've accomplished in different roles. And when I talk about what you've accomplished, I want you to get concrete. I don't want you to just say, we had consistently profitable years. I want to know what margin were you profitable by and what could you tie your contribution to and how much of an impact did you make? Now, if you're in a business development role, sometimes this is easier. But even my husband, who's in manufacturing and scheduling, that's what he used to do. In each one of his roles, he would identify when there was a cost reduction, when they had a production improvement, when they had improved performance that could be measured. That was something that he paid attention to. And it was documented within every role so that when it came time for his annual review, not only was the annual review about what they recognized, it was also about him sharing, this is what I noted. Does that line up with what your information is as well? Because I want to make sure that I'm able to track where I'm making an impact. And businesses aren't always the best at doing this, which is why you need to be the one in the driver's seat of your career throughout your career and not just during the interview process. So do make sure that you step back, you understand what those metrics are. Now, how you relate those metrics when you are in an interview. So you ask questions, you're determining what are some of the objectives you have? Where are you facing some of your greatest challenges or struggles? And if you are able to then identify something that you know you'd be able to knock it out of the park in that role, what I would like for you to do is rather than jump up and say, I've done that before, I would suggest instead you relate an example. And I encourage you to use an acronym that I absolutely love called SPARK. And that acronym will tell you it's the different elements to a compelling story. So S stands for situation, P stands for problem, A stands for action, R stands for results, and K stands for keep them engaged. What that sounds like in a story. Mark, can I use you as an example?
Nothing better than me.
For a moment? Okay, well, at least in this one, I can hopefully tell a few other stories as well.
Yeah, don't tell the bad ones.
I love telling stories. Well, let me tell you the situation of how I actually met Mark. One of my other clients owned a medical practice, and she was in business with a partner that they had just come to a spot in their relationship that she recognized she needed to exit the business. The specific problem that she had is her partner had an idea of what the business was worth that wasn't in line with where she felt it truly fit into the market. So in other words, he wanted a fire sale on a business that really was a solid business. And she wanted to be paid fairly so that she could exit and move on into other roles. So the action that she took was working with Mark. And Mark came in and did a valuation that was realistic based on what he could take the business to market and get from an outside buyer, which that added a lot of leverage to negotiation, as well as he was able to step in and help the other partner recognize that she truly did know what was going on in the business and that there were some things that maybe he wasn't quite as forthcoming about, but that Mark was able to uncover. And it put her into a really strong bargaining position to be able to exit the business on her terms. So when you identify that there is either a partnership that may be evolving, a business succession that needs to take place, and you know you need somebody that can give a true and accurate description of what that business is and how to move it forward, Mark's your guy. And I can't recommend him highly enough. Would you like to visit with him? Now, when that happens and when that introduction happens, there's a really good chance that Mark's going to get a shot at an opportunity. Now, that same opportunity works for you. So when you're telling the story, instead of saying it along the lines of, I did this or I did that, if instead you relate it from the perspective of, so I understand that there's been a lot of activity happening around change in accomplishing, let's say, you've identified that they're getting ready to undergo a lean initiative or performance improvement. What you would relate is say, from what I've recognized in your industry, there's either been consolidation or focus on improving performance across your divisions and teams. I'd like to suggest, this is just an example of what we did in my last role. We were able to come in and accomplish this through the team, through me bringing this approach to the table. This was how it rolled out and how I was able to help shepherd the process and get the project done. These were the results. It was this performance improvement or this percentage of improvement. So you are going to relate that story, and then you're going to wrap it up and tie a bow on it. So what you're getting ready to embark on is something that I have a lot of experience in, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have related to the nuts and bolts of how I got that done. And that may open the door up for a very technical conversation where they truly will want to dig in and discover exactly what you're looking for. Ideally, and we are going to dig into this a bit when we talk about next steps, what is absolutely fantastic is if you can get a trial engagement where perhaps they hire you for 2 to 4 weeks to come in and do an interim engagement where, think about it like a paid job interview. Those are absolutely fantastic if you can uncover those opportunities.
Yeah. This is my favorite thing, and this is just sort of to protect your heart, guys. There are, you sent your resume. They know a lot about you. They've probably done a little research. And I hear this all the time. Well, we were looking for a CPA. You don't have one. We were looking for a dog, and you happen to be a cat. You can't fix that. So many of you guys leave that interview thinking, oh my God, I have to be a CPA. You're not likely to need to do that. Find someone that's not. This is just an excuse you can't fix. And if you start seeing those things during the interview, you should enjoy yourself now because you're off the hook. They're probably not going to hire you. So now you can start really have some fun. Like, what about my resume made you think I was a CPA?
mean, and you can say that in a way that does not come across as an up yours. I will tell you that.
Well, yes, there is an opportunity maybe to turn that around. You could say, well, why, something along the lines of what makes a CPA preferable or necessary in this job, and let them explain it to you.
And then I always like to ask, well, then why did you invite me in?
Exactly. If that's really necessary, what in my resume or my background made it interesting enough for you to spend your time with me this afternoon?
And then one thing that I do encourage you, silence is your friend. When you ask a question, you need to just sit back and wait for the answer. And it may be a little bit of a pregnant pause, and that's okay. Don't rescue, just wait for the answer. And if they don't,
so nice.
If they don't understand the question, then reframe the question and say, could you give me an example? Or when has that been necessary in the role? Or when were you missing that? Did the last person in this role have a CPA? There's a lot of insight that you can capture from here. Okay. It's probably been drinking from a fire hose for probably the last 30 minutes or so. Before we dive into the wrap up of the interview, what questions does everybody have? Have we helped you reframe how you're going to approach your next interview, whether it be tomorrow, next week, or next year? We can't have done that good of a job. What was different about what we're suggesting? Is this a different approach or a different philosophy about interviewing? Yes? No? Hopefully we're keeping you awake.
It's all good.
I'll jump in here. I think a lot of times you just don't prepare enough.
Yes.
That you think you can go in and just wing it. You may have done some, cursory review of their website and, maybe jotted down even a couple of notes, but that's not preparation. And so I think the thing I'm taking away is, if you're serious about taking up somebody's time, you need to respect that and put the work in ahead of time to make it beneficial for both parties.
And to that end, Tom, I would encourage, and this is something that I know that you're mindful of, what your value of your time is. And if you think about it, you're going to spend anywhere from 4 to 6 hours preparing for and in an interview with an opportunity. What I would encourage you to do is take your hourly rate and take it times the 4 to 6 hours. And then as you look at the opportunity, determine whether or not you would be willing to write a check to that business in that amount. And if it doesn't make sense, if you don't see the return from the interview, then don't do it.
Yep.
And that actually lines up also with fractional opportunities and pursuing those in particular.
Nice.
Okay. Are we ready to close the deal? Okay, let's talk about how you close the deal. Next steps. What I encourage you to do is understand what their decision-making process will be. Ask the question about what's your timeline for making this hire or for making a decision. What are you seeing in the candidates that you're interviewing right now that you like the most? What is missing from the candidates that you're looking at right now that you really wish was present? Understand who else will you need to visit with prior to them deciding if you're a good fit. Who besides them will be involved in making the decision? Even if you're talking to the CEO of the business, they are going to talk to someone else. There will be other interviews. And if they don't have other interviews for you, then I would suggest you make recommendations about people that you would like to meet to further explore the role. So for instance, if you are applying for a CFO position and the CEO says, well, I'm the one, you might suggest, is there someone in a COO role? Is there someone else that's over in HR? Understand, can you talk to the VP of sales? The more you can discover all the different elements of that business, and I'm not talking about dragging it out, I am talking about having an accurate understanding of that business and whether or not you want to work there. And then the more you understand, when you have that conversation, it's easy for you to say, what do you need to know about me to be able to determine whether or not I'm your guy? And I need to know at this point kind of where you're at, and then relate where you're at as well. You can let them know that you're also interviewing for just the right fit. You want to understand the company, the culture, the team that you would be collaborating with. You want to understand what expectations are for the role, and you want to be confident that you would be able to perform and be excellent in the performance of that role. Ask what questions they have, what doubts they might have, what you might be missing. If you approach this as an opportunity that you really want to pursue, you need to discover what all the potential obstacles would be, and then your job is to knock those obstacles down. You're either going to go over them, through them, or around them if they're unimportant. But you have to help them recognize whether or not they are truly important. But ask the questions and continue asking the questions, and ask the final question is, so where do we go from here? And that's really what you're looking for, is whether or not they're going to be making you an offer. And then do you know everything you need to know about whether or not you would accept that offer? Mark?
I think we put so much of our heart and soul into interviews. And sometimes we put so much of our heart and soul into an interview with a job we don't even want to do. And I just need you to understand that you should find and work and look for jobs that you want to do and that you love to do, because you're going to work hard to find a job anyway. So find the one that gets you going. You have been working for, if you're a family member, probably 20 years. You know what you like to do and what you don't like to do. Get out there, especially, we've been in a tough market for the last 15 years. It's not quite so bad anymore. You can be a little more particular. And if you go into that interview with the suggestions and doing what Brendan and I suggested, you're prepared, you ask good questions, and you come across competent, you're going to get the offer. And so be prepared and don't underestimate yourself, and find work that you want to do and companies you want to work for. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. Well, I am actually sharing in the chat a link to an upcoming webinar. So if you think we have covered a lot of ground in 45 minutes, Mark and I have shared probably this much of a process that's this intensive. Actually, it's kind of this intensive, but my camera doesn't go that big. I need a wider angle lens, I guess. And we have been hard at work looking at how to share a process and roadmap that can help you transition and secure your next opportunity, whether it be fractional work, whether it be consulting engagements, whatever it may look like for you to be in the driver's seat of your career. And I have just shared the link with that to that. And we're holding one next Tuesday from 4 to 6 in the afternoon. And then also there is another one on Wednesday. If you can't make Tuesday, message Mark and he'll give you the link for the Wednesday from 10 to 12 meeting as well, because there's 2 separate ones.
And what Brendan is talking about is a masterclass we've put together called Freeway to Fractional. And it helps you to know the questions and understand the information you need to know to make fractional leadership roles a viable option versus a last resort for people that want to work for themselves and be in control of their own careers. We're really excited about it. We did a beta class that was amazingly successful. We've rewritten it, we've rebranded it, we've put all new slides together. Brendan, if I knew it was going to be this much work, I'd not said yes, but I've enjoyed it, and it's a fantastic class, and we would love to have you take a look at it next week. And
I will share
eventually get there.
Okay, let me share the link again. And oops,
as she's doing that, we have 4 modules and 19 and counting lessons. We start with understanding yourself and what you love to do. We talk about validating what you think you want to do in the market. We talk about the administrative background of that, what you need to put together to be in business, and then we launch you. And it's a step-by-step process to make you a major contributor, not only if you go off on your own, but if you work for someone else, if you deploy these ideas and concepts.
Oh, thank you, Charlotte. I appreciate you sharing that. That would be absolutely fantastic. So if you did not see it in the chat, Charlotte will be sharing it also via the follow-up email that you will receive. So understand, we are here to help. Right now, there is so much happening in the market, and we're hearing about the great resignation, and reshuffle is a trending hashtag on LinkedIn that's relating to people that are wanting to just change something up about how they engage in the workforce now. And we want you to be in the driver's seat of that process. And that's something that Mark and I are called. We definitely feel a calling in order to serve in this area. And we're delighted to help in any way that we can. So feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn if you have not yet done so. I also encourage you, we've got Angela on this call, that I do suggest you reach out and connect with her as well. She is one of our resources that we are delighted to collaborate with on this offer. Our goal is to help you identify, secure, and land where you want and how you want. So we're excited to help wherever and however we can. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share some insight with you this evening. Hopefully you found some knowledge nuggets through what we related, even if it was just 1 or 2 things to think about a little bit differently, but we're happy to help.
Any questions, concerns, anything we can deal with immediately?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you. I thought that was wonderful information. And right now I'm still trying to drink from the fire hose, so I don't know if I have any follow-ups yet. But my fingers were working fast as I tried to get some of that notes taken. So I really great thoughts, great pointers. Appreciate it.
Well, and there is a recording, so we encourage you to go check out the recording and know that what we're going to be talking about next week, this is a lead-in to it. We are not covering the same ground next week. We are going even deeper. So do come prepared to take away a lot of great information. So if you want to dive deeper, we're happy to help.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mark. Great seeing you again.
Yeah, I either have to come to Atlanta or you have to come to Kansas City, or we can meet someplace in between. Lynn,
Let's take a road trip out there.
It'll be fantastic. Anybody else? Comments? Good. Well, I want to thank all of you for showing up and supporting this effort. And I'm always available through the FANG and you know, or LinkedIn or anywhere, a million other places. So if you have any questions, if I can help you in any way, please let us know.